Deputy Director John Massey, welcome to Troy Public Radio.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
And Lieutenant Colonel and Civil Engineer Dave Jokinet, welcome to Troy Public Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, we're going to be on a first-name basis. You have an intriguing program to tell the listeners about, starting with General Hap Arnold. Who was he?
I'll start off. General Hap Arnold was a lieutenant at West Point in 1907 class. He graduated. He was an infantryman. Then he started love for aviation. He dabbled a little bit with aviation, and in 1911 he got to fly with the Wright brothers for 2 months, and so it was very exciting. He grew a passion for it. Then he set several records in D.C. area for air maneuvers and got the McKay Trophy. And then he did a little bit back and forth between infantry and the aviation. And then he went to the Signal Corps and the Pentagon for World War I, where he helped, express the need for air power.
And Dave, he seems to have been called the father of the Air Force, and yet it was the Army Air Corps back then.
Yes, the Army Air Forces. He flew a lot of the bombers is what was his passion. And one of the earliest examples is he went to a round-trip flight from D.C. to Fairbanks with 10 B-10 bombers and back. And so he got another McKay Trophy awarded for that accomplishment. So he had some early accomplishments for air aviation. And then he went on to set up in World War II is where he truly excelled, and that air power became very important to the Army. And he was the head of the Army Air Forces, and he grew the force from, I think, 22,000 and 9,000 planes to over, 2 million and 75,000 planes that he was in charge of. And then he retired in 1946, and then afterwards Congress gave him his 5th star and the first general of the Air Force.
And John, he died in 1950. What impressed you about his life?
Well, he gained the nickname Hap for his happy disposition. And I found that fascinating. Just we think about old military stories, and especially during World War I and World War II, many people make that connection that it was probably a kind of a rough environment at times. And you think about somebody who worked their way up and really became that founding father and pioneer of what the Air Force is today, and to gain the nickname Hap because he was always very, kind of happy-go-lucky, just happy demeanor, personality about him. That really resonates really with our military service today, where we work with the other services, not just in the Air Force, but the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and now the Space Force coming up, but also working with interagency partners and international partners too. So that really resonated with me, his personality and his demeanor, and how people recognized him. And he is a staple to this day in the modern United States Air Force.
And Dave, as you pointed out, it's all about his leadership. And we're talking leadership today.
That's correct. Leadership, he had some perseverance, too, during some hard times. Like he testified on Billy Mitchell's behalf at his trial. And so, he had sticking with his friends, sticking with what he knew right with aviation. And, there's probably a lot of setbacks, in the early on, but he stuck with what he thought was right and what strategy he knew what the Air Force and the United States needed in the future for aviation.
Both of you are enrolled as students in the Air War College at Maxwell Air Force Base. How has Hap's example helped you in your leadership classes?
Well, I mean, for me personally, it's helped tremendously. I remember we both came down in July of last year to get ready for the academic year to start, and shortly after we arrived, we had a presentation given to the entire student body about the General Hap Arnold Outreach and Executive Leadership series or program. And I think I could speak for Dave as well, but I know that immediately resonated with me and jumped out to me as something that I'd be very interested in. And it's really allowed us the opportunity, along with many other colleagues that we have that are participating in the program, to go out and to speak and to kind of share our personal stories and some of our experiences that have had a lasting impact on our lives and our careers with a variety of populations. So it's one small way to give back in General Arnold's name. So that's what I'm grateful for, and I really cherish the opportunity to continue doing that.
And Dave, let's give an example from your own life. You found yourself in a leadership position during a crisis. What happened?
Yes, as a crisis leadership situation at Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi. I was a civil engineer squadron commander. It was May 23rd, 2018, and there's 200 planes, aircraft flyer training there, and so one of them was on takeoff, and the pilots had to bail out, and the plane crashed just off the edge of the runway, and so we had to respond, emergency response, to a downed aircraft just outside the base. And it takes a team effort. Lots of members of the base and the community come together to solve that problem. I was a recovery officer. After the initial emergency, the fire chief deemed it safe, but there's a whole series of situations that you have to overcome as a leader. You have to be decisive. You have to take lots of information, lots of people giving you information. You have to analyze it and act on it. And then you have to trust your team that's been preparing for this for a while, because they each have individual tasks, but then you as a leader have to bring it all together.
And separate out your emotions.
Yes, it is. It can get a little, you get fast moving and your brain's thinking, and then it's like, what do I got to do next? And then sometimes it just comes naturally then, because your training kicks in, and then you're like, these individuals and people are counting on me to make a right decision, a timely decision.
So, John, coming up shortly in March is the Executive Leadership Forum named for General Hap Arnold.
Yeah, so we're coming up on, I believe, March 24th here at Troy University Montgomery, and we'll be having an event. We have 3 speakers that are going to be joining us along with the moderator, and they're going to share some of their stories. They're very powerful, very impactful. We've been to several events over the last few months, and we've shared these stories, and they've really resonated with our audiences. So we're looking forward to a good crowd to come out and to listen to these stories that have had impacts on some of our senior leaders in both the military and the civil service. And we're hoping for some dialogue and some good questions from the audience that attends. And
in your own life, you have gone from security to counterintelligence back and forth. Tell me how this has affected your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with the Department of Defense now for about a decade as a civilian, and within my first couple of years, I worked in security, and I felt as though I was pretty good at my job, and wasn't really sure what I was going to do as far as next steps go. And I had a great manager and supervisor who encouraged me to apply for a position in counterintelligence. It was with my same agency, but it was located at our headquarters. And I pondered it and wondered whether or not I should even consider applying for the position. I decided to apply for the position, and I ended up getting selected for it. And I remember the first few weeks and even first few months is a very intimidating environment, and I think in many cases my new supervisor was challenging me and seeing really what I was made of. And many days I went home wondering whether or not I made the right decision and even going into that position. But I'll tell you, I worked really hard, and I tried to learn and absorb as much as possible from some really great people around me. And as I began to prove myself to my new manager and supervisor, he began to offer and afford me more chances and more opportunities to really step out and do some incredible things that I had never imagined beforehand I'd be able to do. And those experiences really helped lead me to where I am today. I was in that position for a couple years. I left that position and became the chief of a field office, which was actually the office that I initially worked for, so it was almost a return home for me. And for the last couple years now, I've been deputy director of operations, and I credit it to that first supervisor that I had that gave me the opportunity and encouraged me to step outside of my comfort zone, to take a chance to try something different, because even though I thought I was good in that first position, I never realized how much I didn't know until I stepped out of that comfort zone, tried something different, and got that new experience and that exposure to those other opportunities to help me get where I am.
What you two have been talking about is developing the leadership skills to defend our country, basically.
That's correct.
Now, final question, and decide who wants to answer this. Is this Executive Leadership Forum in honor of General Hap Arnold open to the public? John?
Yes, it is open to the public, and it'll be here at Troy University, Montgomery, on March the 24th, and there should be information available on the website shortly.
All right. Dave, is there anything else you would like to add as a civil engineer?
Just as a leader, we're coming in with the community to increase dialogue and communication. Also help out with education, so when we're in those future situations where we deal with the community, we're more comfortable understanding what the issues, our shared issues that we have, so we can help solve them together.
I want to thank you both for your service to our country.
Welcome.
Well, thank you for having us today. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.